Hello, I'm Shirley Romaine, and this is Art Scene on Long Island Update. For more than 20 years, I did a program for Cablevision called Art Scene on Long Island, but this is an update, and I'm really very excited about it. My guest today is Constance Schwartz. She was the director of the Nassau County Museum of Art, and she was really one of the mainstays of my program during those 20 years. I think probably I did every show that Connie presented at the museum. And as I said, she really brought art writ large to our suburban community. And to this museum, she brought famous artists and artists who became famous, and movements and all aspects of the arts. And she did it with intelligence and with taste and with glamour. As the director of the Museum Emeritus, I'm happy to say that she has done it again with this wonderful show, New York, New York. And it is my pleasure to introduce Constance Schwartz to Art Scene Update.
What a lovely introduction, Shirley. What a lovely introduction.
Well,
Thank you.
Well, I really feel I had to. I think you made such a major contribution to the arts on the island. I mean, you really established something very important. I go back to it all the time, and I've been playing the programs from my archive, and many of them are of you. So you're
That's
still
nice.
with us. You're still with us. And I just want to say that as director of the Museum Emerita, you have done it again in your show, New York, New York.
Oh, I loved doing it.
Oh, well, it is
so
just, I just love your show. I really do. I think it is wonderful. We'll get specific, but let me just say that each of the, I think there are 140 works.
146 works of art.
Word.
That's a lot of
That's a
paintings
lot
and
of
sculpture
painting.
and whatever.
But I do want to say that there isn't one painting or photograph or print that doesn't bring something special to the mix. I really mean it, and I went through it, you know, very carefully the other day, trying to find if there was one that I thought maybe wasn't so hot, but they're all simply terrific. Viewers, I think, will really have an experience. I was trying to think about how to describe them, and I finally was telling my husband about it, and I said, each one is a gourmet choice. And I really felt that way about them.
Well, in the selection of all of them, you know, I wanted to make it a real mix by providing the viewer the opportunity of seeing things that they may or may not know about New York through paintings, through prints, through photographs, and sculpture, and an environment.
Yeah.
And an environment. And so, and that is very interesting because New York has so many sides to it, so many seams that bring everything together. And it is those seams that I was interested in showing.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested. As I said, I love the show, but I'm curious as why, you know, as a former director of the museum, why you chose to do a show about New York.
Because I felt it's so important to Long Island. I think we're an entity unto ourselves at this particular point. We started out here in the suburbs, and the suburbs has gradually grown to be its own city. And yet, at the same time that we've grown, we're so close to a metropolis, a real metropolis. And when I say metropolis, I mean with all the glamour and the seedy parts of it. But people that live here in Long Island, they depend upon New York for so many things. Many of us work there. We go there for recreation. We are able to take advantage of all the glamorous things, the theater, the movies, the restaurants, the museums, the concerts and ballet, all of that. It's a tremendous feast for us. At the same time, we're growing in that area ourselves. We try to offer more and more in the arts for our residents. And at the same time that we do that, which is so important because it's in people's backyard, there's a certain something that when you go into New York that cannot be replaced.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's for sure.
And you know what is so interesting about that exhibition, because part of the fun of it is to walk through it and listen to the comments of the viewers. And invariably, so many of those viewers say, oh, I remember this so vividly.
Yeah.
You know, and it's still there. Or this is not there anymore, but I remember it as a child. And that was also the nostalgia.
Yeah.
Oh, that wonderful nostalgia.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's really wonderful. So your choices are fabulous. And I mean, you've chosen a certain period. And what is it that you want to tell us about, you know, where you begin and where you finally
I really
end up?
began at the beginning of the 20th century. But there's one item that's from 1899, and that is the most wonderful horseless carriage. It's a carriage that has a shift, and it really goes.
Oh.
And it sits right in the middle of the gallery, and everyone that looks at it says, I want to take it home. It's an incredible artifact, yet at the same time, it bespeaks of that period that is no longer with us. I mean, transportation in New York City is one of the most sophisticated in the world. You have everything. You have buses, you have trains, you have trams, you have overhead things, you have planes, you have steamship. But that horseless carriage, that was what filled the streets.
That was it.
That was what filled the streets. And so some of the pictures that are on view show that horseless carriage with the horse and buggy, and maybe a bus thrown in for good measure.
Yes.
So you get this variety of things that create their own rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I was reminded again as I went through your main gallery as you walk in, of the presence of the Ashcan painters. I love their work.
Well,
I
they
really
were
do.
so important to us. First of all, the whole exhibition is based upon realism that has changed through the years, but it is realism all the way through. There's one painting in the exhibition that I diverted for, because it's called The Rush Hour by Max Weber, but I wanted to show that because although abstract, it really shows what goes on during the rush hour. New York, at the turn of the century, was an extraordinary place. It was really the Mecca, not only for the artists and that we talk about within the exhibition, but it was the junction where the steamships came. And so much of that was based upon the immigrants that came to this country. And they landed in New York. At the turn of the century, there were so many different nationalities, ethnic groups. There were some, right after World War I, excuse me, there were like 200,000 Irish, 200,000 Germans, 400,000 Italians, and 600,000 Jewish people landing here in New York, all on the east side.
Yeah.
It was probably the most densely populated area in the whole United States, even in the world. And what was so extraordinary was that it made New York City a mecca for neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It was the Irish section, it was the German section, it was the Jewish, and you got the flavor of the ethnicity. Part of this tremendous growth was the fact that all of a sudden you had these tenement buildings that emerged. And people were offering back rooms and basements for people to live in. And so that helped the housing situation, which was pretty drastic.
Well, you know, I felt as I was watching that it was of a period, but that it also says something that is contemporary, because we are seeing how immigrants are changing our city and changing our suburbs as well.
It started that way, and it's, again, it's an ongoing
well, we're a country of immigrants.
That's exactly
Aren't we all?
Anyway, these artists that begin the exhibition, they were called the Ashcan School. And they were called the Ashcan School because they painted the everyday life of the citizens, how they lived, how they worked, how they played. And because they all lived in the East Side or around the East Side, this was what they honed in on. And so they created a picture of what was. You know, it was very meaningful for me to always take my children with my husband down to the East Side so that they could see the push carts. They could buy a big, big bread and know what it felt like to bring it home and taste with real chunks of butter. And it was wonderful. It was because you still had that flavor. This was a very hard time for these people. And so the hard times were reflected in the art as well as the good times. And what was so extraordinary at that period was that society met in the streets. That was where
life was in the streets.
That was what it was. Life was in the streets. The communication was in the streets. And the pictures talk about this, what was in the streets. And so we have a number of different kinds of expressions.
Well, listen, why don't we go to show them, because I'd love to. We start with John Sloan. It's Becker Street, Saturday night.
Saturday night on Bleecker Street. I remember having date night on Bleecker Street. It was a wonderful place to go to. Well, what happened is that on the tenements, in the bottom of the tenements, there were stores. There were cafes for music, for different things. And on this particular John Sloan painting, you see people of the neighborhood dressed up in Saturday night's finest. And what were they doing? They were walking the streets, talking with each other in groups, to each other, and they were looking in the store windows. What kind of store windows? Food store windows. So you see them meet. And John Sloan is a classical painter.
Oh, I love his
The emergence. How do you paint the dark? How do you paint the dark? How do you show that it's night? He does it. And then, of course, he focuses on the objects that he wants to highlight in the stores, and he creates this marvelous, wonderful light within the dark. And so this is a neighborhood. This is a neighborhood, and you see people enjoying the neighborhood.
Next, we have Everett Shin, the bar at McSorley's.
The McSorley's Bar, which still is in existence. It's the oldest tavern in America. And it was a place where the workers would come after a day's work. It was a wonderful thing to do. And so you have a variety of people that show up at McSorley's Bar to get a drink and have the camaraderie that they want. But this was really a place that was an oasis for these working guys. And why not? Why not?
Why not? Absolutely. And then next we come to Ernest Lawson, which is an excavation at Penn Station, which obviously fascinated a number of them, because a number of these painters, the Ashcanners, did this excavation. It was enormous, and I guess it was a real challenge.
It was enormous, and of course Penn Station is one of the icons not only of transportation, but it also has become a place to visit. That tremendous pit that excavation,
Yeah.
and it was enormous, and that's
huge.
what fascinated everybody.
Yeah.
It was so huge,
Yeah.
and it was a very major construction site, which meant a lot of people went to work.
Yeah, I know Bellows painted it as well. There's several paintings
Bellows
of it.
painted it, and Lawson painted it, and Sloan painted it, and many of the artists painted it, and it was a sight to see. And what did they paint? They painted this extraordinary excavation site, which eventually was finished
Right.
and became this glamorous,
Yeah.
glamorous station.
Yeah,
But they recorded it in history.
yeah.
They recorded
Yeah.
in history. And these artists were originally artist reporters in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
They would go out with the reporter of the day, and they would sketch the crime, the horrible things that were
remember.
happening in the city, as well as the good things that were happening in the city. And this was because although the camera had been invented, it was the developing stage that had not been
remember.
perfected. And so in order for them to make their deadlines, they couldn't wait for the development of the pictures, so instead they hired these recording
Yeah.
artists.
Yeah.
Now, once that development procedure was perfected, these men were out of a job.
Yeah.
And so they came to New York. And that is how this whole realism movement started,
Yeah.
from these artist
Yeah.
reporters.
Yeah.
And it just grew like topsy,
Yeah.
because the people were so fascinating, the neighborhood was so fascinating, and they recorded a whole way of life that is part of our history.
Yeah. Let's go on to Reginald Marsh, and we have memories of the Stork Club.
Oh, Reginald Marsh was an extraordinary Yale graduate, came from a very well-to-do family, and he was fascinated by the Bowery. He was fascinated by the bums.
Yeah.
He was fascinated by the way they lived, and he painted them. He also painted a variety of different neighborhoods besides the East Side.
Yeah.
He loved Coney Island.
Mm-hmm.
He loved the voluptuous babes, and he loved Steeplechase and all of these areas. You know, for a nickel, you could escape the hot city and drive to Coney Island.
Imagine.
And go to Steeplechase, go to the beach, go everywhere. And at the same time, he painted the elegance of the Stork Club. That was Sherman
Yeah.
Billingsley
Yeah.
Place.
Yeah.
And all the elegant debutantes and rich people
Yeah.
would go there. That was their watering hole, very different from McSorley's. But so we see that.
Yeah.
And then we also see a picture of Union Square. Union Square has this monument of Washington, still there. And around the base of it, you see all these homeless hobos
Yeah.
that were not working, and they're all sitting around that very elegant statue in the middle of New York.
Yeah. No, I think we have another one in this group, which is of Childe Hassam. It's Lower Manhattan. And please tell us about him.
Well, that picture is so beautiful because right near the East Side was the financial district, Broad Street. You didn't have too far to go. And that was what Childe Hassam
Yeah.
painted. He painted these huge skyscraper buildings, and they create a canyon, a human
Oh, yes,
canyon.
absolutely.
And down below, you see the workers, the
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
But the picture is done with an impressionist style brushstroke
Yeah.
in exquisite grays and blues and whites and yellows. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous picture. And yet it's a tough neighborhood. It's a tough financial neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he makes it so romantic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think of him, and I think of mostly he painted celebrations of one kind or
That's
another.
correct.
And that valley, the look of the valley was very, I think very much with him. But I see always the flags flying and the people in line, and they're all celebrations of one kind or another.
That's right.
It's a wonderful painting. I do want to ask some other things. I haven't really talked about you because you are a painter, and I'm wondering if you're able to spend time these days doing your own work.
I still paint. Yes, I do paint. But I am an art advisor at this point. I advise different private collectors on increasing their holdings, selling off their holdings, and accessioning new things and de-accessioning things that they feel that they want to sell. So that is what I'm doing, and I'm having a very interesting time with it.
Well, I think it's wonderful that you found something that really uses your skills.
Well, that was
because
the whole idea.
Over the years, you know
right.
and have learned and have given us so much in the way of art, artists, movements, periods, all of the things that make up art.
And that's what I'm trying to do in a different sector.
Yeah.
Away from the museum at this point. But I love the curating. I'll never lose that absolute passion that I have
so this
for
was
the curating.
Fun,
so this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had forgotten how much work it was.
Well, of course.
It was a lot of fun.
And then, of course, there is Red Grooms.
Oh, he is my buddy.
Well, I knew that you had a very special relationship with him.
I love Red Grooms.
So tell us what you have, because that's a big part of this exhibit.
One of the things that I wanted to show in this exhibition was not just the obvious things that we all know about New York, although they are part of it. The Statue of Liberty, you can't have a show about New York without having the Statue of Liberty. You can't have it without showing the Empire State Building, and you can't have it without showing Rockefeller Center. All of those icons are there. But I wanted to show the seedy part of New York as it was. And Red Grooms had an environment that he calls the alley. Actually, this alley really exists. It's not too far from Water Street, where Grooms lives. And people use that as a shooting place for pictures, motion pictures of eerie, scary movies. They go and shoot it in this alley.
Yeah.
It's called Cortlandt Alley. He has created a complete and total environment where the walls sort of envelop you. They're red and black, and they have the seedier side of New York. Now, in the 80s, this was a really scary area. It has since been cleaned up, but here you find the hobos, the down and outs, animals, a truck with a driver you don't want to know, and it is so absolutely enveloping and exciting to experience it, because it's not only seeing, it's experiencing.
Yeah.
And that was what Red Grooms has brought with that particular environment. Now, his paintings are huge. We've got a couple of murals there.
Well, I was going to say the murals.
That are terrific. And it's like a panorama from one side to the other. This was 7th Avenue between 21st and 22nd Street in the 70s. And it's fantastic because you see the traffic, you see the stores, you see people moving around, marching around, all kinds of people. Yeah. And the expressions on all of them, each one has its own identity. It's a terrific opportunity to experience New York through the eyes of Red Grooms.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's incredible. I would like to put up a slate just to let people know where they can come and see this exhibition.
That would be interesting.
And I do think if you are an art lover, you will love it. If you are not, you will leave the exhibition and you will love it. You will have been transformed into an art lover, I promise you. But let me just put the information up on the, let's have a slate so people can see where this is. New York, New York, at the Nassau County Museum of Art. It's July 22nd to November 5th, 2017. One museum drive, and that's in Roslyn Harbor. It's just west of, it's on 25A, just west of Glen Cove Road. And the museum is open Tuesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. And I do want to tell you that there are docent tours every day at 2, and the docents are terrific. They really are terrific. They will enhance your experience enormously. Now, they have a series of special events that they do at the museum, and if you call 516-484-9338, you'll be able to make a reservation, or you can log on to nassaumuseum.org/events. A gallery tour on Sunday, October 22nd at 3 p.m. will be with Connie Schwartz, and I'm sure that's going to be very well attended. And your admission will cover the cost of that exhibit. And there's a daily screening, Modern Dreams, Art in America. Connie, we have just about run out of time, and we're just beginning. I really hope that we will do this again, because
I'd love to.
It's just too much fun. And please keep me posted about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, you're too precious to let go. Anyway, I'm Shirley Romaine for Art Scene Update. I'll see you soon.